Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, the law firm of Gibbons, P.C., NJM Insurance Group, and by Hackensack Meridian Health. Promotional support provided by NJ Advance Media and by NJ Biz, all business, all New Jersey.
This is One-on-One.
I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that. Life without dance is boring.
I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are, there is always something to learn.
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
That's a good question. High five.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. We're at the NJTV studio here in beautiful Newark, New Jersey, Brick City. It's a very special interview. We are honored to have the 55th governor of the great state of New Jersey, Christie. Governor, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Steve.
A couple things to get out of the way.
Sure.
We're taping on the 22nd, the 27th, if you will, of November. January 16th, Phil Murphy will be the new governor of the state. How many days left?
49.
How did you know that, just like that?
It's right in there, baby. It's in your head. I've had this job. It's 2,920 days if you get two terms.
Wow.
2,920
Thing you're most proud of is? Things, plural.
Well, I mean, first off, I think the response to Hurricane Sandy will always be kind of defining moment of the governorship for me, was enduring that and then bringing the state back from that. And we are almost completely back from that now and did it in 5 years. And it's just pretty extraordinary when you compare it to other natural disasters around the country. New Jersey did it better than New York. It did it better than Louisiana or Mississippi, and I'll always be incredibly proud of that.
Let's keep talking. By the way, for those of you who want to go back and see previous interviews we've done with Governor Christie, remember some of those?
Yeah, we had some, yeah.
Spirited dialogues.
Spirited dialogues.
Yeah, live call-ins.
You go all the way back to the U.S. Attorney days?
Oh, yeah. Go back, steveadubato.org. Isn't that a great
website?
Great website.
Have it on my favorites.
It's going to start already. Here we go. Let's talk about some areas of your governorship that I've always been fascinated by, and one of them is the issue of leadership, style. You and I have had so many offline as well as online conversations about leadership. Biggest leadership lesson you have learned, Governor, in these 8 years is?
I can't hold grudges.
You?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because there are going to be, when you have divided government, as we've had here in New Jersey, Republican governor, Democratic legislature, the entire length of my governorship, all 8 years. So you have to deal with folks who philosophically are not necessarily always in line with you. And even from a process perspective may not be in line with you. You're going to have disagreements, and some of them are going to be public, and some of them at times are going to be emotional. They should be, because that's what I think debate should be in our democracy. It should be open, it should be emotional, it should be direct.
Is it personal?
You try not to make it personal. Sometimes it gets personal.
Operative word, try?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we were successsul most of the time in not making it personal. And the proof of that is, my relationship with the legislative leaders that I've worked with over
President
time.
Steve Sweeney, who will be actually with us in a couple weeks, we'll ask him about that as well. Constructive relationship, even though the two of you have gone at it publicly in the past.
Sure, but in the end, we've always been willing to get into a room and make a deal. And that's what divided government's supposed to be about, is making things work for the people who elected you. And we've been able to do that for 8 years. I mean, I think 8 years ago, if you had interviewed me and I had told you that we would get pension and benefit reform done, that we would get a cap on property taxes, a cap on police and fire salaries, that we would merge the state's universities, that we would fund $1 billion, $1.2 billion in growth in the capital structure of our state colleges and universities, that we would have bail reform, which is now leading the nation.
Explain to folks what bail reform means.
Two main pillars to bail reform. One is that if the only reason you're in jail is because you're poor, meaning you committed a crime, but you don't have $500 in cash to be able to post bail for yourself, so you wind up staying in jail, those people no longer stay in jail. They get out. As long as they're nonviolent, they get out. But on the flip side, we used to have mandatory bail even for the most violent of criminals. Now, the people who have a rap sheet as long as my arm and your arm put together of violent acts, judges can keep them in jail pending their trial. Great compromise between Republicans and Democrats, and all of the civil justice and criminal justice reform organizations in the country say New Jersey is the model now.
You know, it's interesting, Governor. I asked you about what you're most proud of. Again, there's a list of things you clearly are proud of. You did not mention, and I'm going to follow up on this, your statewide and clearly your national profile and the efforts around helping those who are addicted to drugs, particularly on the opioid end. Talk about it.
Well, it's incredibly personal to me.
Remind people why.
You know, a very, very good friend of mine who I went to law school with became addicted in his adult life to opioids and alcohol. We did an intervention with him. We helped him through treatment a number of times. And ultimately, he passed away 4 years ago. This had always been an important issue to me. I've been involved in drug treatment, the efforts to help make drug treatment available, going all the way back to the mid-'90s with Daytop Village in Mendham and some other places as well. But it became even more personal to me when I saw someone who I had great respect for, incredibly bright, accomplished in every way you define it, whose life literally got eaten away by this disease.
When you were sitting down with Governor-elect, as we do this program, Phil Murphy, you spent some time with him, about 90 minutes, I'm sure. Did you talk to him about this?
It's one of the issues that came up.
Do you sense he's committed to the effort, not in the same way you are because you've had different experiences, but do you sense he gets it?
He'd have to speak for himself on that stuff. You know, Steve, I think one of the things in the relationship I want to have with the new governor
talk about that.
Is to make sure that I can be there as a resource for him when he needs me. And I think if you're going to do that, you can't talk about what you talk about because then he won't trust it. He won't trust that you're giving him advice that's purely for him and his consumption. And so I won't make any judgments about what he's committed to or not. His public record will speak for itself. He'll be in the spotlight exclusively come January 16th, and people will be able to judge him based on his record, what he does.
Forget about the conversation then, because that is your style, and I knew you wouldn't tell me what you talked about in private. Biggest challenges he is facing and that we are facing as a state are?
Well, we're still facing the enormous problem fiscally of pension and health benefit costs. Now, we've done some significant reforms and save $120 billion over the next 30 years, and I'm very proud of those reforms.
Did you go far enough?
No, I didn't go as far as I wanted to, but I went as far, in the last conversation we just had about, compromise, I went as far and probably farther than Democrats ever thought they would in terms of fighting the public sector unions on this.
Why do you have to, quote, fight the public employee sector?
Well, because they want everything.
Governor, they want everything.
Yeah.
Across the board, all of them, they want everything.
Predominantly, and I think...
As opposed to simply, dare I say, and by the way, full disclosure, the NJEA is a major underwriter of our programming in support of public broadcasting, as opposed to protecting their members.
Well, listen, we could do a whole show on this.
Okay,
but the fact is this. The bargains that they have struck in the past by using their enormous...
Previous governors.
Yes, and legislatures, using their enormous financial, political muscle, have been bargains that have come close to bankrupting this state and will ultimately bankrupt this state and its citizens. And it's simply unacceptable and can't go forward. And it's the biggest challenge, and the new governor will see that. He will come to acknowledge that. And by the way, he acknowledged it back in 2004 when he did a report for Governor Cody.
As the head of the commission looking at this. By the way, there's a Communication Workers of America. There's a whole range of public employee unions. I want to be clear here.
Sure. But they all
Do you take out police and fire? Do you separate police, those who are on the police force, fire departments, those public servants? You separate them out in terms of what they want?
Well, I separate the members out, but their unions are part and parcel the same. They just are, Steve. I mean, listen, they're fighting right now to not have a 2% cap on their salaries, which we've had now for nearly 8 years. They're fighting not to have that done. Yet, we have the second highest paid police officers in America, and we have the highest paid firefighters in America. When is enough enough? They've got one of the richest pension systems in America. They have Platinum Plus health benefits that cost in the range of $30,000 to $35,000 a year for family coverage that the taxpayers of the state are paying for.
Governor, where do you, go back to the teachers thing for a second. Where do you think the perception on the part of a significant number of folks has come from that believes that on some level you have been at, quote, war with public teachers in public schools, that there's a, quote, war on teachers. Now, I know you differentiate between...
That's the creation of the union, because that serves their purposes. You see, when the executive director of the NJEA makes $1.2 million a year, and the average teacher makes $75,000 a year, who do you think is most interested in protecting the status quo, Steve?
But isn't that the question of the membership to decide that?
No, because much of that money is, all of that money that they get paid is collected by the state, distributed to the teachers union, and required of the members by state law. So we've put ourselves in the middle of this situation. They can't voluntarily get out of the union. They must pay their dues by law. We put ourselves in that situation at the end of a loaded gun, political gun, by the teachers union.
By the way, to that end, we will have the leadership of the New Jersey Education Association of the Communication Workers of America moving forward, talking about these issues and the issues the governor raised, because they're not going away, because there is a pension crisis in this state. Shifting gears.
Yep.
Donald Trump. So if I play the game, that's not a game, if I ask the questions about regrets, and I ask you about Donald Trump, do you have any regrets about, A, the presidential campaign as you ran in it, and people can decide for themselves a view on that, and your interaction with Donald Trump during and since? Loaded question, I know.
Yeah, as for my own presidential campaign, my only regret is that I didn't win. But I ran the kind of campaign I wanted to.
Do you have a sense as to why it didn't work out the way you wanted to?
Oh, I think there's a number of different factors, but the biggest one was Donald Trump.
He's the biggest factor.
Sure, he occupied the lane that I intended to occupy.
Describe it, the lane.
The direct, no nonsense, tell it like it is leader. And he occupied that lane, and there was no room for anybody else in that lane.
Yeah, but Governor, you may say you occupy the same lane, but his approach
it doesn't mean
to
we
communicating,
stylistically the same way.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, no one's going to accuse you of being shy and retiring,
Right.
and you've had your public confrontations, but they're different here.
Mm-hmm.
As a student of leadership, we both are.
Right.
As a practitioner of leadership, you are. Your assessment of the president in terms of his leadership style and how effective it is on behalf of our country in solving our real problems.
Well, I think that's still to be told. You know, I think 10 months into his presidency, it's a little bit too early to judge it. I think, 10 months into Bill Clinton's presidency, we saw his leadership style kind of disorganized, constant, college lecture in the Oval Office approach to be one that wasn't working for the country. And I think as a result, it cost him significantly in the midterm elections. He ultimately became a much better leader and understood how to do that. George W. Bush, in the first 10 months, 8 months, or 9 months of his presidency, there was a lack of focus, a lot of people thought. Yet 9/11 came, and that was his crucible. And in my view, he rose to the challenge. So I think on Donald Trump, too soon. I mean, it would be too soon to have judged either of those presidents, our last two presidents, before President Obama. And by the way, President Obama, too, a very mixed bag in the beginning, even though he had veto-proof majorities in the Senate and a significant majority in the House. So we need to give people time to grow into the presidency, to develop their own leadership style, and to have that leadership style evolve based upon the success or failure from a policy perspective.
When we come back, we'll talk to the governor about a whole range of issues. Governor Christie, this is one of, I think I can say this safely, one of the, you'll do other interviews, but one of the most significant interviews you'll be doing as you
One of the
up.
only ones I'll be doing.
Appreciate that, Governor. We come back right after this with the 55th governor of the great state of New Jersey, the Honorable Chris Christie.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
Welcome back. I'm Steve Adubato. More importantly, the gentleman to my left, Governor Chris Christie, the 55th governor of the state. Governor, let me ask you this. We talked about leadership, talk about regrets. I use the word regrets.
Yep.
Lessons. You could use them either way. When you think about Bridgegate, you say what to yourself that you'll say to us publicly?
I still can't believe it. Can't believe it happened. I can't believe that anybody who was in our government would ever have thought that conduct like that was acceptable. And it's one of the regrets that I have is that when you make thousands of decisions of people to hire, you got to be perfect and lucky. And I was neither in that regard.
What would you have done differently once it broke?
Nothing once it broke.
Nothing.
No. Listen, I stood up for an hour and 50 minutes before the National Press Corps on live television and took every question, even at a moment when I didn't really know all the facts. But I felt like it was so important for me to show the people of the state that I did nothing wrong. And the only way for me to show that was to be willing to answer every question. And nothing that I said that day has been contradicted later on, including my own role in it, which was zero.
You know, one of the things that we've talked about in the past, Governor, on many of the interviews, and again, I remind you, go on our website, our producers will put it up, check out some previous interviews we've done with the Governor. I'm fascinated by you and I talk online as well as offline about family. And we're not the only ones. Folks in New Jersey, people in all the states watching us right now, your family, usually the most important folks in your lives. How do you believe the governorship has affected the Christie family?
Generally positive. I mean, generally it's been a really great thing for my family. They've had enormous opportunities and experiences that they otherwise would not have had. You mentioned Bridgegate in the last question before that.
How tough was that for them?
Enormously difficult. And I would just say, you know, I told a story recently that when I came home that night, after the day that all this became public, and I found out about it the very same day, I came home that night and our oldest son, Andrew, was waiting in the kitchen for me.
Was he at Princeton?
He was at Princeton at the time, Princeton University. He drove up from school to be with us that evening. And he looked at me and said, I just have one question. And I said, what? He goes, did you do it?
What were you thinking right in that moment when he asked you that?
That this is not one of the moments that you picture of having to have that conversation with your son. And I said, no. And he goes, well, then okay. Got nothing to worry about. You know, so you have moments like that that are enormously emotional and difficult as a father, because all you ever want to be is a positive role model for your kids and a point of pride. And at that moment, he had to ask me the question. But it also told me about our relationship, that he felt like he could ask the question. And that, in fact, he had the right to ask the question because we were all in this together.
Including Mary Pat.
Sure.
Talk about Mary Pat, who's played a critically important, the First Lady in our state for the past 8 years. Her role in terms of supporting you, dealing with you?
Well, what everybody has to understand is that we've been married for 31 years, and we've been together for 33 years. So this is a relationship that it's almost like I don't really even remember what my life was like before she was in it. Vague recollections of it, and I glorify those times, I'm sure, as we all do in our late teenage and early 20s years. But she is, in every respect, a full partner and has been enormously supportive. I could not do what I do if she wasn't with me. And there have been moments where she hasn't wanted to.
Yeah.
But it's the deal she and I struck as partners to be supportive of each other's careers, in addition to being supportive parents together, supportive children to our own parents, and all the different challenges that, you know, come up in life that you need a partner, and it's better if you have a partner to do it. And she's been amazing.
The other part of this, excuse me for interrupting, Governor, the other part of it is that, you know, my wife Jennifer could be supportive of me in the way she is, and that's great. But for you, the difference would be your stuff plays out so publicly, whether you're talking about Bridgegate, whether you're talking about the presidential campaign, which the whole family was a part of, or the scene at the beach, if you will, that people choose to deal with the way they do. The public exposure, which you know you signed up for, you never backed off on that. Was it different / harder than you ever thought it would be, the public ridicule and criticism?
Well, I think what happens is...
both nationally, not just in New Jersey, but nationally.
I mean, it's international. I mean, we were in Italy on vacation this summer, walking around, and actually in Sicily, and we were recognized.
Say that again?
We were recognized in Sicily, walking around in a small village in Sicily, and we had people come up and say, "Gubernador, Gubernador." You know,
because your family, you have some family originally
my
from.
Mom, yeah, my mom's family is from Sicily.
Right.
So we went back to where my great-grandparents were married before they left to come to the United States, and so it was a great trip. But the point is that I don't think when you run for governor, we couldn't have possibly understood the kind of national profile that we would ultimately develop, and international profile we'd ultimately develop. Now, that was based upon what we accomplished. And people wanted to know us more and wanted to hear from us more. But I don't think you could ever anticipated that, Steve, in November of 2009. And so it's been a blessing to a large degree, but there have been moments when it's been very difficult. But what I've learned is you can endure much more than you ever thought you could.
This question has been asked. I always like to think that we're going to ask you questions, or I'm going to ask you questions that are so unique and special. But I've heard you do some other interviews. I read this very in-depth article in Politico, which was fascinating. Regrets, ? Christie has a few, whole range of others. But how much do you think right now with, how many days left again?
49.
As we do this program on the 27th of November, how much do you think about your life after the governorship and what you will do?
Thinking about it a lot now, 49 days to go. I mean, I'll wake up on January 17th and not have a job for the first time since I was 15 years old. I was 15 years old, I got a job working at a gas station in Livingston, New Jersey, a part-time job. And I've never had a moment since then where I didn't at least have a part-time job, if not a full-time job. So that's 40 years. So I'm beginning to think a lot about it. And what I know is that there's not any one thing that's going to keep me satisfied after the last 16 years. I'm the first governor in the state's history to serve back-to-back as U.S. attorney and governor. Only the second person who's had both of those jobs in the state's history. And when I leave office on January 16th, I was sworn in as U.S. attorney on January 17th, 2002. I will be 1 day short of 16 consecutive years as either U.S. attorney or governor. Those, to me, are the two best jobs you could possibly have in New Jersey in public life. And so for me, I know there won't be any one thing that will satisfy.
No 9-to-5 gig for you?
No, and not any one 9-to-5 gig. Because I'll be bored if I do just one thing. So I think there'll be a number of different things I'll do. I don't have anything set at this point, but I'm starting to have conversations and discussions with lots of different people. And, I've said I want to have some fun. I want to be able to spend some more time with Patrick and Bridget, our two younger children, and I want to make money.
Thank you for your candor. We've got a couple minutes left, Governor. One of the things that's interesting to me is the relationship you've had with the press/media corps and our great, as we're here at NJTV studios, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the dean of the press corps down in the State House, Michael Aaron, right here on the NJTV News with Mary Alice Williams. Your relationship with the media, final question, how would you describe it?
I think it's been honest. On my end, I tell them exactly what I think.
Adversarial?
At times really friendly. I mean, you saw before we started the show, David Cruz came in. David and I have a really good relationship, and there have been times I've really let him have it. And other times where he's asked me really awful questions.
We've seen it on the air. We've seen both ends.
So,
by the way, to be clear, you've done the same thing with me.
Right. So here's the thing. I think your job as governor is to be available and to be direct and to not take crap from them.
What?
Yeah.
Our job is to, hold on, respectfully, Governor, our job is to give you crap, no?
Yeah, and that doesn't mean I have to take it. Doesn't mean I have to take it. And the fact is that I think that's why you see a lot of division in the public now about their attitudes towards the media. I think the public is sick and tired of
us doing our job?
No, of some people who have an agenda and an attitude in this business who have no relationship to the truth or reality. And there are people, mostly opinion people, in this press corps, not mostly the day-to-day reporters, but the opinion people in this press corps who also masquerade as day-to-day reporters and show up at times at press conferences and ask questions as if they're objective reporters when they're anything but that. I could do without those people, but you know what? I just don't deal with them. Don't have to. And I think I've proven in 8 years you don't have to.
Final message to the folks in the state of New Jersey after these 8 years, what would you say to them?
What an amazing honor. What an amazing privilege. I mean, to be the governor of the state where you were born and raised for 8 years, to be reelected with 61% of the vote, to get that kind of affirmation after your first term, and to have everybody in the state give you that sense that, they're pulling for you. Even when they disagree with you, they want the state to do well. No matter what the polls are, you always felt people are supporting you and your efforts? Yeah, listen, I've been at 78% and I've been at 18%, and I've been every place in between. And I just don't think the polls the polls only matter on 2 days, Election Day number 1 and re-election day. And on those two, I retire undefeated.
Governor, you have never lacked for confidence, and I don't think that's going to change when you leave office. So I also want to say on behalf of all of us in public broadcasting, thank you for always being candid and direct, and we appreciate your time and wish you and your family all the best.
Well, thank you, Steve. Appreciate the opportunity very much.
Thank you.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by NJIT, the law firm of Gibbons, P.C., NJM Insurance Group, Hackensack Meridian Health, and by these public-spirited organizations, individuals, and associations committed to informing New Jersey citizens about the important issues facing the Garden State, and by Employers Association of New Jersey. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
I think at NJIT there are a lot of smart students.
I came to NJIT for mechanical engineering because within state it's one of probably the top 3 schools for engineering.
It sort of creates a friendly competition where you can learn from them.
It's a great academic school.
I feel I'm being challenged, but at the same time I love the classes I'm taking.
The atmosphere of being here is like being at an upstart company. It's that same kind of drive, that same kind of passion.